Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Wolf Conservation Center for our informative webinar about wolves in Poland. My name is Regan Downey, and I'm the Director of Education at the Wolf Conservation Center, and I'll be moderating tonight's program along with Dr. Joey Hinton, the Wolf Conservation Center's Senior Research Scientist. The Wolf Conservation Center works to advance the survival of wolves by inspiring a global community through education, advocacy, research, and recovery, and we're funded by people like you. So thank you. Our scientific webinar series allows us to bridge the gap between research and the general public, which allows for engaging discussions and increased advocacy. We're so excited to welcome Dr. Katarzyna Bojarska. Dr. Bojarska is a biologist working at the Institute of Nature Conservation, Polish Academy of Sciences, and at Göttingen University in Germany. She studies the behavioral ecology of large carnivores and their prey. Her favorite subjects are wolves and their behavioral adaptations to living in human-dominated landscapes. Before we begin, I'd like to point out a few housekeeping tips. You can use two Zoom features to communicate with us. You can use the chat feature for general commentary and the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen for questions. We'll have a designated question and answer portion at the end of the webinar. If you would like a question to be answered during the program, you'll need to type it into the question and answer box. For anyone who would like to enable live captioning, you also have the option to do that as well. This webinar is also being recorded and will be available for viewing on the Wolf Center's YouTube channel within the next week. But with that, I would love to turn things over to Dr. Bojarska. We are very excited to learn about Poland's wolves. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to talk to you today, and welcome. It's 11 p.m. here, so I'm gonna stay up half of the night, but I think it's worth it. And today I would like to talk to you about how wolves are living in Poland, and to look at Poland and Europe in more general. From, with the eyes of a wolf. Let's see if I succeed. Okay. First thing, it doesn't work. Oh, so the first thing I would like to talk about is not wolf yet, but the general human impact that we have on the world. So if you look at of course, there are many different methods to measure how strong the human impact is. But nevertheless, even if you combine them, when you look at the world map from the perspective of the strength of the human impact, you can quickly recognize that that Europe is actually one of the most changed places in the world. Here in this map, you have the gradient from relatively natural places being more blue and more changed places being more yellow. And you see that Europe, besides Scandinavia, so the northern part is basically all yellow, and it's much more changed and human dominated than other parts of the world. Nevertheless, sorry, but it's okay. Nevertheless, the large carnivores are coming back to Europe, and well, these maps are already a few years old, but you can see that both brown bears and wolves are really returning quite fast. And while brown bears are more numerous than wolves, when you see at the areas that are actually covered by the species, you will definitely see that the wolf might be considered more successful than the brown bear, because brown bears stick mostly to the parts of Europe that are relatively natural, while wolves are spreading all over the continent. And they also arrive to the places where you would never expect to see a wolf. And for me, such a standard example of this is Denmark. probably most of you have never been there, but it's a country that is really densely populated and mostly very changed. So it's mostly comprises agricultural land. And despite that, wolves made naturally its way to Denmark. And after 200 years, they started to have breeding wolves there some years ago. Of course, there are other parts of the story. As wolves are beginning to overlap more and more with humans, they also come into conflict with humans. And I'm not gonna talk too much about the conflict today, but I just wanted to signal here that these conflicts, of course, they have many faces. And one of the oldest ones is, of course, livestock depredation. One thing that is more new is the hybridization of with dogs. And here you see a picture of pups, and it's a litter of wolf dog hybrids. And then you start to see more and wolves more often close to human settlements. And the two pictures on the bottom, they show quite well the typical examples of that. So the blood on the stairs, it's a remaining of a wolf hunt that involves wild prey. So a wolf pack actually chased a deer into somebody's yard, and basically into somebody's doors, and kills the deer there. So you can imagine that when the owner opened his door in the morning, was not very happy to see what he saw. And finally, we have wolves that come to people for different reasons. So the last picture, the wolf in the haystack, is it's a wolf with mange, so with a skin disease that very often causes wolves to approach people in search of food, in search for food, and in search for warmth, as in this case. So haystacks are just a place where they can actually rest and keep themselves warm. And because of these, because of the wolves approaching people, we have we as Europe, or European Union, developed some kind of guidelines how to perceive different wolf behaviors and what to do when we would see wolves behaving in different ways. Well, I don't want this is available online, and I don't want you to go through the details here, but I wanted just to point out one thing. So according to European guidelines, the wolf starts to behave in an unwanted or strange way if it approaches people at a distance of less than 30 meters. And less than 30 meters is really, really small distance. So even then, if the wolf approaches the people, it still can be considered a normal wolf. Unless, as with the red color, it does it repeatedly and actually, actively follows people at the distance of 30 meters. And the pictures next to the table is one of the wolves that we have in the Carpathians now, and that approaches repeatedly people, at a distance of less than 30 meters. But this individual does it. Actually, there is a pack behaving this way. Does it approaches not people on foot but cars, and this, according to those guidance, is still okay. So we developed I think quite a big high tolerance towards wolf fearless behavior. And when we are talking about wolves not being afraid of people, I always want to pause for a moment and just to think about what we call a natural behavior versus unnatural behavior. And of course, this if you maybe some of you know that the person in the picture here is Dave Mitch, so it's not European story, but we don't have such stories in Europe really. He had the chance to work with wolves that had never seen people before, and those wolves were just not afraid of him. So we can say that a natural behavior is actually lack of fear. And then because of how we treat wolves in general, they start to develop this very strong fear of people, which is, according to Mitch, like the main obstacle why wolves actually don't get domesticated every day. So we should not be surprised that wolves approach us, in short. Coming back to Europe and now to Poland, more precisely, this is here is a map of a human footprint index, where you have the black areas where the human footprint is very low, and then the whiter it gets, the higher human footprint is. And here, human footprint is calculated as a combination of human population density, of settlements, roads, changed environments in general. And you can see that, again, Northern Europe is quite dark, but when you look at Poland, that has orange borders here, you can see that it's quite light, so it's quite human dominated in terms of the landscape. And then when you compare the human population density, which is, I think, a good index of how the environment has changed, you can see that while Europe has only 34 on average people per square kilometer, Poland has more than 130. So we are actually quite densely populated country. But at the same time, we have a position in Europe that is very central, and we are like at the border of the so-called Western Europe, which is considered civilized and has this different history, and Western and Eastern Europe that is considered still wild and relatively unchanged. But then, if you look also at the human presence, not in general in the settlement and so on, but within the wolf habitat, you could see that that also there Poland is quite really sticks out. So humans are everywhere. This is a slide that summarizes my research that I conducted in 4 different countries. One of them is outside of Europe, and you can see that it just confirms that Poland, in this case, Polish Carpathian Mountains, which are quite touristic, popular touristic destinations, are basically invaded, in this case by tourists, and there are many people appearing within wolf habitats in the forest on a daily basis. And they're of course Croatia is also very touristic, but still Poland has many more people present within the wolf habitat. And despite all this, many people believe, especially in the Western Europe, of course, that Poland is a very wild country. And that's just one first example, a random example from the internet. But Poland is, for many, considered European nature reserve, because we still have some remainings of those primeval forests and old animals like the European bison, which is in general on the verge of extinction. If you look at the wolf history in Poland, you can see something that you probably can also see in the United States. So there has been a lot of events of wolf persecution, and then wolf recovery, and then persecution, and then recovery again and again. And the general pattern is that when people were fighting, so during large wars and other political turbulences, people were just too busy to take care of the wolves, and therefore the wolves were doing quite fine. And then just after any war, and in this case, you can see clearly the First and Second World War. Just after they finished, people realized, shoot, we have just too many wolves. We should do something about that. And then they start to exterminate them. It's the last example that we had in Poland was after the Second World War. So during the Second World War was expanded, and they were present basically in the whole country. Of course, we don't know how many we had, but the government considered there were too many of them, and announced so-called wolf action, and that was state-coordinated systematic extermination that involved every citizen that would like to take care of it, participate in it. So what happened? People were paid for every wolf killed an amount that was equivalent to average monthly salary in those times. And then special books, guidelines, how to exterminate wolves were published, and everyone was strongly encouraged to go out and try to kill wolves with any methods available. So wolves were poisoned, trapped. The pets were taken from the den. In general, it was very efficient. In the most intense years, the numbers of wolves killed per year reached 400 or 500. So that was so within few, as you can see, within few years we had a really large drop, significant drop in wolf numbers. And then just in 1959, the wolf plague, as they called it, was announced to be over. And this very intense persecution stopped. So basically, from 1955 to 1959, in 4 years, the wolves were almost removed from the country. Numbers then were very small. It's around 100 in the whole area. And after that, a few years passed, and in 1975, the wolf was declared a game species, and that was actually a significant upgrade because the wolves were still killed, but that was much more in a much more controlled way. So not everyone could kill the wolves, only the hunters. They had a closed and open season, and only the hunting methods, so shooting, were allowed. And that went on for around 23 years, and then in 1998, the wolf was declared as strictly protected in the whole country, and it continues to be so till today. So after that, so just 3 years later, wolf monitoring started in Poland, and you can see that in the beginning of the 2000s, there were still very few individuals, just a bit more than 100, and most of the wolves we had were located in the east of the country. There were few packs, because those ellipses here represent packs, but they were very rare and scattered in the west of the country. And when we look at the wolf presence today, we see that the wolves are basically everywhere, and no one even tries to draw the pack territories nowadays. These are just the dots here are just the 10 per 10 kilometer squares in which the wolf presence is confirmed, and you can see that basically we have the wolves in the whole country, except for the very middle of it, where we basically have no forest. And also the numbers, we are not sure about the numbers we have, but the estimation is like much more than 2,000. So I already mentioned that the forest is important when I said that that the woods were almost missing from the center because of the lack of the forest. So yeah, forest is important, but not only for woods. It covers more or less 1/3 of the country's surface, but it's very fragmented. So from a wood perspective, it's the patches of forest most of the country are very often too small to establish a working territory in them. The wolves they need typically at least 200-kilometer forest patch, but those patches are just not there in the country. The good news is that most of that forest is not private, but is state-owned. So there is this in this sense it's protected. But the wood industry is actually a very significant part of the country's income. So they are just intensively managed. They are almost all of them, besides few national parks that comprise very little of the surface. They are very, very intensely used, and this use involves just logging, very often large-scale logging, and replanting, and then again logging and replanting. And as you can see in the pictures, a lot of them, of the forest, of the Polish forest, is just pine, cut pine. So the question is, how did the wolves manage to, despite all these obstacles in terms of habitat and human presence, how actually they manage to survive, not only to survive, but also increase numbers and we can say guide in our country. First, and most obvious answer to that should be, of course, they can reproduce very fast. So they, as you know, they have pups every year, and we have quite big litters in Poland. They like 10 pups. It's quite a common thing to see. And the second part is their dispersal. So the wolves, the young wolves that leave their natal packs and go to look for new territories, they can travel quite far away. And this is an example of wolves dispersing from just 2 packs, actually 1 pack in the central Poland. And one very important thing that I wanted to highlight here is that within a typical wolf dispersal event, even from the central part of Poland, they usually travel far enough to cross national borders because our countries are just so small. I just added here a comparison of the United States and Europe, and you can see that Poland is basically of the size of what I believe a large state in the USA. So it's not difficult to cross a country border when you are a wolf. And then, despite the fact that most of Polish forests are very fragmented, they can still survive in this mosaic of forest and agricultural land. And that's one of the examples of the telemetry data that we have from the central, again, Poland, where you can actually see, of course, the yellow dots are telemetry locations, that wolves, in general, they try to stick to the forest. Even if they are small patches, they try to spend most of their time within the forest, and they use the open lands, so agricultural fields to move through them, but this movement is quite fast, and it happens mostly during the night. So they learn to avoid people in this way. And now I would like to move to a research that I did for several years in the west of Poland. There were the red dolphins, so at the very border with Germany. And that forest called the Lower Silesia Forest was actually an exception. So that's one of the biggest forest complexes within lowlands of Poland. More than 1,000 square kilometers, which can hold several packs. So well, it looks good. It's huge, but it looks good from above. But when you come down, you can see that it doesn't look like a type of forest you would like to be in. So it's a pine monoculture with like equally aged stands, monospecies, large, and with basically no understory, which in most cases means no shelter for the animals. And you basically can see through as you see in the picture. And what's more is, of course, it's very intensely used for logging, and that means also fencing. Fencing is a thing that we do often in the commercial forest, and the aim of the fencing is to keep the ungulates, so mostly red deer and roe deer, out of young forest stands. And in that forest, this fencing is very intense. And there is basically 1 kilometer of fence per square kilometer of forest. But that's not all, because there's also a very, very tight grid of forest roads. Of course, if you want to intensively manage your forest, you need to drive to your forest. And in this case, we have a grid that equals more or less 4 kilometers of roads within a square kilometer of forest. And those roads are very straight and very squared, and they make the landscape look like a chessboard, basically. And of course, not all forest roads are the same. They are bigger and smaller, but still, most of them are drivable by a four-wheel vehicle. And so, no surprise here, most of the wolves we actually see in that forest are on the road. And now I will come more to the wolves themselves. So this is one of the wolf families that I worked with, and so I put in this case I put a telemetry collar on the breeding female, and later on one of the older pups. And yeah, their territory where they wolves in that place had territories that shifted from a very big one along the German border to a smaller one as their densities grew during the years I spent there. And I would like to tell you how those wolves, this very, very big but also very, very modified forest, adapted to human presence and to human modification of the landscape. And this I will divide this in 3 parts. And in the first one, I will talk about where the wolves kill their prey, and then I will move to where the wolves travel and scent marks. And with the first part, I will talk about resting. Where the wolves kill their prey, which is mostly red deer and roe deer, was a good question, actually. In general, as you well know, wolves killing a large ungulate is not easy for wolves. And therefore, it's very important to find, not to find the ungulates, because the densities are most of the time high, but to find a place where they actually catch it, stop it and catch it. And there are many American papers that show that wolves know where to look for such places. And these could be frozen water bodies or just water bodies, could be deep snow and places like that, could be mountain valleys. But when you look at this forest, you start to wonder because the landscape is very flat. There are barely any water bodies, and there's definitely almost no snow during the winter. So since a wolf cannot outrun a deer, how do they catch their prey? And one of the answers that we found in our research was that they use the forestry fences that I mentioned before. And that was a way to catch their prey, especially in case of the roe deer. You don't have roe deer in the United States, so I also included a picture of a male and a female, and these animals are quite small, and they don't live in groups. They lead a solitary lifestyle. But because of their small sizes, they are very often the first ones to actually get into the forestry enclosure. And now this picture is taken with a photo trap, and it shows a roe deer passing over a fence that is old and already collapsed. But what happens way before that, when the fence is relatively new, is that they find their way under the fence, and they can squeeze themselves through an incredibly small hole in the fence, and just feed on the young trees that are inside. Interestingly, wolves figure that out quite fast, and thanks to their behavioral flexibility, they learn to check those fences and routinely while just traveling through their territory. And if they detect a roe deer, they just easily kill it within the fence. The second part is about scent marking and the movement of wolves, but it will be mostly about the forest roads. Just a quick recap about the scent communication in general. So wolves communicate with by scent, by defecation, by urination, and by scratching the ground. And this is a very important way of communication when it comes to just hold their territories and defend them from other wolf packs. It's also quite safe, so they don't have actually to engage in aggressive encounters. And it's efficient because once a scent mark is left somewhere, it will be smelling for quite a while. It is also important for the communication between the pack members, of course. But for the scent marks to work, it's very important that they are placed in a way that where they can be actually found by other wolves. And we found that forest roads offer such an opportunity. So forest roads are first of all used for wolves to travel, just daily travel within their territories. And that's quite important because wolves in Europe travel around 20 kilometers per day. And of course, it's just much easier and faster to use a road when you walk. Everyone knows that, right? And then since wolves walk on the road, and they know that other wolves also walk on the road, it makes a perfect sense to send marks also on the road, just because that's where the other wolves are gonna smell it. But the big disadvantage of roads is the downside is that wolves that humans also use roads, and well, humans primarily use roads. So, and this means danger. So what we did, we looked at telemetry data first, and we tried to understand if wolves avoid the forest roads. And what we found in this very dense road grid was that wolves were, on average, only 120 meters from the nearest forest road. So that seems very close, but on the other hand, if you have a road every 300 meters, it's quite far. And yeah, indeed, when we compared that with the random points generated within the wolf territory, we found that random points were actually closer, a bit closer, only 40 meters closer, so 80 meters from the closest road, but closer. And this means that wolves, like, actively and on a very small scale, try to avoid the roads and stay away from them. But when we compare that with our snow tracking data, and we snow tracked for hundreds of kilometers and many winters, we found that around half of the snow trails that we followed were located on the road. And this made, at first glance, no sense for us, because on one hand, wolves avoided the roads, and on the other hand, when we looked at telemetry data, but on the other hand, they seemed to select the roads when we looked at the trail data. And the answer to that is just the speed of the movement. So the wolves, while once they hit the road, they start to move fast. And the reasons for that are many. So first, it's easier to move fast, and second, it's just better to move fast, because the faster you move, the sooner you will get to the place you want to get, and the sooner you can leave the road, and which might be a place where the humans will meet you. And what's more, we, during the snow tracking, we counted all the scent marks that we could find on the snow, and we found that 70% of those scent marks were located on the road, and also more than half was located very close to the crossroads. And here I included some graphs on that, so you can see that the probability of scent marking was in general the lowest off-road, and then higher with on the forest roads in general, and then it was much, and then it decreased with an increasing distance from the closest crossroads. And that makes, again, perfect sense, because, of course, if you leave your scat or other scent mark on the crossroads, you double or sometimes triple your chance that a wolf will find it. And then when it comes to the traveling, so we go back to the telemetry data, we try to check if the timing of the wolf's use of roads differed. And what we found is we divided the day into working hours of the forestry personnel, so it's basically between 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. and the off-work time. And what we found that in terms of time, there was little difference. So it did not matter for the wolves whether it was the working time or the off-work time, if they were on the low traffic roads or off-road in general. But when you consider the big roads, the roads where the traffic was the highest, then they really took care not to be there during the working hours. So they used those roads still, but they selected the time where the people were not there. So to sum up, so again, thanks to their behavioral flexibility, they learned to use the forest roads despite human presence. Just modified their behavior, so they move faster and they scent mark intensively when they do. And the next part is yes, it's about sleeping. So it's perfect to talk about this now in the middle of the night. And before I start about where the wolves sleep, I wanted just to come back to the international research that I mentioned before, and show you that wolves try to avoid people everywhere, but in terms of time. And what I mean here, what they try to do is to sleep or rest when humans are around, and to be active when humans are gone from the forest. And if you remember from the graph before, I showed you that the human presence was the most intense in Poland, and also the temporal overlap between people and humans was the lowest in Poland when you compare those four countries. So that's why it's cool and certainly not a coincidence. But when we come back to where they sleep, what we see is that wolves in general, when they, of course, the resting time is the time when the wolves are most vulnerable, because they are just not prepared to escape. They lower their guard. So it's very important to select the places which are the safest during the rescue phase. And what they did was they selected the sites for resting that were located as far as possible from settlements and the main roads, so the public ones, asphalt, and the forest roads that were the most busy ones. And what we went to the resting sites that we located before, based on snow tracking and on telemetry, and we did habitat assessment there, and we did a very simple thing. We tried to measure the visibility, which is basically the sighting distance. So we placed red and white cylinder in a wolf bed, and then we walked away and we measured the distance from which we could actually see the cylinder. And we repeated it for the resting sites and for reference sites that were located very close but were not used for resting. And we found two major things. So first of all, during the night, the wolves did not care so much about the visibility. So the visibility at the resting site was actually quite high, 50-60 meters. But during the day, the story was very different. So not only the visibility during the day was lower than during the night, but also just there was a strong difference between the resting sites and the reference sites, just located just 100 meters away. And that means that wolves really took great care on this very small scale of 100 meters to sleep in the densest place possible that offers the best concealment. And in practice, it looks like that. So on the left side, you have an example of the daily resting site. That's my dog that's sniffing on it. And you can actually see quite a lot from that resting site. You can see over the border with Germany through the German landscape. And on the right side, you have a night resting site, and that's located in a very young and dense forest, and was really difficult to get there. So I've been talking about wolves being afraid of people. but I also told you that wolves are strictly protected in Poland. So probably many of them were wondering why are they afraid. So yeah, the protection has been going on for more than 20 years. But the human attitudes are not always positive towards wolves. And again, we did a research that involved not the whole population, but just the people that actually deal with wolves on their daily basis. And these were foresters and people, village inhabitants from the wolf area. And what we found was that actually the support for the strict conservation was quite low, and more than half of them the respondents were talked in favor of wolf hunting, coming back to wolf hunting. And finally, all this, of course, has a very strong impact on illegal killing of the wolves, and it's extremely difficult to quantify illegal killing. But what we observe is that there's a lot of that going on. I myself found several cases, and the picture is one of them, which is actually a breeding male killed in April, so in a very vulnerable period. And as you can see, the skull was removed, and yeah, so you can see also the wound after the bullet. And it's a typical example that shows that the hunters are the main people who illegally kill wolves in Poland. And estimates that were already published show that the illegal killing is really intense, and it may involve hundreds of individuals per year. And I will finish my talk with a story that I think exemplifies very nicely what I've said before. So different human attitudes and different wolf behavior. So I'm coming back here to the wolf family that I showed you before from the west of Poland, and I will be talking about just one of those wolves, a young male, 1 year old, that we called Poonpak, and that means plumpy one in the Lusatian language. That animal was, I knew him very well because I had the collar on his mother, which, by the way, was an extremely cautious and careful wolf. And she had two pups that survived till the winter. And they were both quite, I would say, for unknown reasons, but they were both quite not so human shy. But as you can see in the picture on the left, one of them, the female, was always far away from people, but the male Poonpak was not afraid to approach persons in the forest. And that was quite strange, and that was one of the reasons why I put a telemetry collar on him, and so I could monitor his behavior in detail. But the next spring, so when he turned 1, he behaved like a perfectly normal wolf, and actually he was the main babysitter of the pack. He spent most of his time with the pups. That I had a camera there at the site, so there was quite. They were very like when the pups turned 5 weeks, the mother was like rarely visible there, and while Poonpak was always there taking care of his siblings, and that lasted till autumn. And when Poonpak started to disperse, and he went to the west and to Germany, and there his behavior changed. He entered also area where that was quite densely populated by people, and started to show up in the villages. And this is here you have a picture taken by a camera trap at the compost site where he was trying to feed. So clearly he was hungry and trying to put any resources, and that was already not welcome, of course, by the Germans. But he crossed the thin red line on one day when a German woman baked a cake, and she took this cake outside, put it to cool down on her terrace, and Poonpak simply stole it. And that was, it sounds funny, but that was the last reason or excuse when the permission to shoot this individual was issued. And despite he did not show very bold behavior directly towards humans, they were determined to shoot it. And what happened from then on was something that I find really incredible. So not only it was a wolf that did not do anything very bad, but also it was not just a wolf. It had a name already. So local German NGOs got very active, and people in general, and they even put on a website that was entitled "That Wolf Poonpak has to live on, has to survive." And within a few days, hundreds of thousands of people signed that website. And of course, well, the government did not care, but people started to actually try to scare Poonpak away. Where they were very active and probably disturbed him a lot, and that caused him to disappear from the site. So this permission, so the shooting did not happen. And Poonpak just disappeared. And after that, several months later, he was photographed on some very open area in the middle of the day, close to Dresden, so hundreds of kilometers away. And that was the last picture that I have ever seen of him. What I think was that he was illegally shot, but what I like to think is that he changed his behavior, maybe met a more shy female and established a family. But this exemplifies how strong reactions wolf behavior might trigger in Europe. And with that, I would like to thank you and I'm waiting for questions.
All right, well, thank you, Kasia. I appreciate it. This is Dr. Joseph Hinton, go by Joey. So I'll be handling the Q&A session for Kasia. So with that, some of the questions that came in, one of them I think is probably like the elephant in the room, has to do with the Russian invasion of Ukraine and how that's affecting wolf numbers in the region. And since you're in Poland, you know, how the wolves are doing there. So I didn't know if you just want to give the folks an update on that and speak to that matter.
Yeah, well, we don't know much about wolves outside of European Union because the monitoring of them is not very, maybe not, I don't want to say not existing, but at least we don't know the results of that. So we have a lot of wolves in the east of Poland, as I said, And some of them, of course, were transboundary, and some of our wolves, I don't know if you saw on the dispersal page, actually go to Ukraine. But what I wanted to say is it looks to us like in Ukraine itself, there is not much wolves. There are not many wolves in general. And that's probably because of quite few ungulates left there. So the war surely what happens there in Ukraine is, but I think the situation was not very different before the war, is that there are not many deer and therefore not many wolves in Ukraine itself, at least outside of the mountains. And what actually influences the wolves in Poland is not the Ukrainian war itself, but something that is less known by many people, and that's the refugee crisis that we have, not with Ukraine at the border with Ukraine, but at the border with Belarus. So a bit north, and there we have several hundreds of kilometers of the border that has been recently fenced by a construction that is actually not passable by any bigger wildlife, including the woods, and that happened already before the Ukrainian war started, the crisis, and so we have now our most primeval forest, Białowieża forest at the border of Belarus, cut with that fence, and we have a lot of wolves there, and some of them had transboundary territories in the past. So, so we have those wolves now limited in terms of the territory and also, of course, it's better. So I think that's what happened, like was more important than the Ukrainian war.
All right, thanks. Okay, yeah, so I'm trying to figure out the best way to bring the questions together. So we had some questions about like ecotourism and then collaboration with other EU nations or other nations in the EU, like Switzerland. I don't know if you could somehow bundle that up just to talk about, like, is there an ecotourist or like a tourist industry for wolves in Poland, and what kind of, I guess, collaborative efforts you guys have over there in terms of countries? Since you pointed out like all the countries there are like states, kind of analogous to states in the US, I didn't know if there's, some folks are asking about collaborative efforts there.
Yeah, so yeah, we do have collaborative efforts in terms of research. We do have some collaborative efforts in terms of wolf conservation, even though it's quite limited, because in the end, what decides, like the status of the wolves is decided on the national level. But thanks to European Union and Natura 2000 sites, we have some transboundary regulations there as well. But in terms of tourism, I don't know about any strong collaborations. But we do have wildlife tourism. It's actually still quite new, I think, in Poland. But especially in the east and in the mountains, so in the south of the country, we have a lot of people actively being like wildlife guides and taking people out to see the wolves, to hear the wolves, and to photograph the wolves. And this last part is actually sometimes a bit problematic, because some of these people that are guides for the photographers are also baiting or just putting out some carcasses to attract the wolves, and this in some places seems to lead to development of some of the bold behaviors that I mentioned before, but that's not really collaborative, I hope.
All right, thanks. Let's see. So we did, again, I'm trying to just bundle some of these up together so that you can just summarize them. One was, some folks noticed like the human footprint figure that you showed, and some folks were pretty like impressed with that. So the high human density out there, but yet you still have like recovering populations of wolves in that very like anthropogenic landscape. So clearly, like the attitudes of people there are changing over time. So it's not so much anthropogenic landscapes, but perhaps anthropogenic attitudes or human attitudes. And so maybe, some, I guess, I don't know if you have any input in terms of what kind of research is being done in terms of social tolerance and how that correlates with wolf survival or mortality risk on the landscape there.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, there's this recurrent question, how many wolves can we have? And this is mostly posed by the wolf haters, so just to call them somehow. And or what's the habitat carrying capacity? And I think the habitat carrying capacity is very high in Europe, and because we have to start with a lot of white ungulates. In most of Europe, not everywhere. But what actually limits the wolf population is definitely the social acceptance, and that's the social capacity. And so yes, how it limits it limits the wolf not only in numbers but also where they are greatly, and that differs a lot between the countries. So in Poland we have this strict conservation and then shoot, shovel, and shut up situation. And the shoot, shovel, and shut up looks like it's going on everywhere, and doesn't matter so much if there is like livestock depredation or other types of wolf conflicts, because the hunters are everywhere, and they, as a group, they accept the wolf presence, but at the same time they kill the wolves because they think they should. But when you look, for example, at Sweden, then I don't know, maybe I can show you the slide. You have like a very clearly limited wolf distribution in Sweden, and that's not because of the habitat, of course, because the habitat is quite primeval. But I cannot now go out from here. But that's because of the reindeer husbandry. So the wolves are allowed to be in the south of the country of Sweden, but they are not allowed to be where the reindeer are. And so any wolf that wanders there is just shot legally, and there are no wolves. So that's like the clearest, and that's similar in Norway, where they just allow a few wolf packs to persist and so on. So yes, there is a very strong correlation in many countries, but then the mechanisms differ a lot within our small countries.
All right. Yeah, no, that was great. Yeah, it's I'm asking a lot in a question, so yeah, you're gonna have these more complex answers. Yeah, some more coming in. Some folks are asking about like hunting in Poland and how hunters feel about like wolf protections in Poland. And some are asking like, how are wolves hunted in Poland? Because here in the US, I'm assuming we do have more liberal hunting here, liberal in the sense of like laws, not like politics, and that we use traps, footholds, and we have much more liberal hunting, techniques or whatever. So I don't know if you could speak to that.
Yeah. So we have no wolf hunting. That's the thing. With the wolf hunting that we had until the 90s was only performed with shooting. There was no trapping. There is no trapping in general for game species allowed. It's only for scientific purposes. So, but right now we have no wolf hunting. In the past, okay, I should probably mention fladry. That was for a Russian method, but that was used in Poland as well. So that's just using strings with flags hanging from them to surround wolves and then to limit them and then to chase them from one side to the other through the shooting line. So we had this kind of activities. Nowadays we still use bladder, but to capture wolves. And what we have now sometimes is like single permits to shoot some individuals in certain places where the livestock depredation is very high, or for some individuals that approach people too much, and that's again just shooting. And then how the hunters feel, I tried to cover it briefly, and I showed you that there is within those people that actually are involved with wolves, so that they live with wolves. There's quite weak protection, but I did not show you that. So we included there whether a person is a hunter or not, and as predicted, the hunters had much worse attitude, so lower attitude towards wolves than just a non-hunter person. Yeah, and in general, that's the biggest problem, because in Europe and in Poland, hunting is not so liberated as in the US. It's not possible to have a gun in most cases if you are not a hunter, and the hunters, they are a very limited group, so it's not for everyone. It's more they consider themselves like aristocracy kind of group, and so they are very limited, but their opinions about wolves are quite bad.
Yeah, people are people. They have the same issues we have in the US. I'm not surprised you guys have it in Europe. Yeah, I don't want to keep you too long because I know it's getting late over there for you. One other question some folks were asking about was basically the genetics of the wolves in Poland. So, and I would add on to it, since you spoke about hybridization, I'd be sure some folks are curious, like, what do you consider a wolf if there is some dog introgression? What's the threshold to call something a wolf before you call it a wolf dog or something like that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't know if it's biological or philosophical, but sometimes I wonder. But in general, we have some dog introgression in almost every wolf in Europe, at least, and that's just a small introgression that occurred many generations ago, but it happens on a regular basis and everywhere. But of course, with the increasing numbers of wolves, it starts to happen more and more often. And in some countries, like Italy, for example, it starts to be a very common thing. In Poland, we did not have it when the wolves were rare, so like 20 years ago, and then we started to have it some years ago. And at the beginning, we had a big legal issue with that, because apparently in our regulations, not only the wolf was protected, but also its hybrids were protected. So we had to change our regulations, and now when we have wolves that are like packs that clearly consist or include a dog and or some strangely looking individuals, we normally have the permit to shoot all of the pack. But that does not happen, of course. So this shooting is just too difficult, and we normally are able to eliminate some of individuals, but some of them just go there and spread their genes again. And so the policy is now that those fresh introgressions, like 50-50 hybrid or 1/4 of a dog hybrid, we try to eliminate, and then we just lose it because they start to look like wolves, and we cannot say whether they are wolves or not. So yeah, so there is always some of a dog there.
Yeah, it's like that with our eastern and red wolves here in the US. We have some thresholds, but they're somewhat arbitrary. Like with red wolves, it's 87.5%. I think with eastern wolves, they consider 85% or more wolf ancestry. That's how they get classified. Yeah, they're hybridized with coyotes. So yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't think we have so precise threshold now. It's more
It's-
like
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because sometimes the phenotype is pretty robust with the introgression. Sometimes you can have an animal carrying a lot of something else, and it still looks a lot like a wolf and acts like one. So what do you do in that situation? Yeah. So, I know it's getting late. I think that's it for the question and answer session. So, Kasia, I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for coming on. I think Regan's going to take over now to do some I guess some announcements. But once again, thank you for the
Thank you again.
presentation. Yep.
Yes, thanks very
Appreciate
much.
it.
Yes, thank you so much, Kasia. And thank you everyone for joining. Just a reminder, this recording will be posted on our website within the next week or so. We've also posted a link in the chat to previous scientific webinars if anyone's looking to expand their horizons with learning about wolves, both in the US and across the country and the world as well. But also, as a last reminder for anyone who is unfamiliar, our Run Like a Wolf Challenge starts on August 1st, so next week, and we would love for folks to join and participate, especially knowing, as we learned in the presentation, that wolves can travel quite far and extensively. It's a nice challenge for us as well. So if anyone would like to sign up, if they've not yet signed up already, there's a link in the chat, and there's also more information on our website, which is nywolf.org. But thank you again so much to Kasia for joining us tonight to share about wolves in Poland, and thank you to everyone for joining as well. We look forward to seeing you all during our next scientific webinar. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.